There's a moment sharp and unmistakable when you see someone exactly as they are. The charm no longer works. Their smile feels hollow. And then it hits you, they know you figured them out. You're no longer pretending, no longer falling for the fake kindness, the flattering compliments, or the calculated concern. You've seen through what they were trying to hide. And in that instant, they shift, no longer friendly, but now engaged in a quiet psychological battle. What happens next isn't random. It's a series of deliberate behaviors designed to confuse you, to make you question your own instincts, and ultimately to pull you back into the very fog you just escaped from. If you're not grounded, you might fall right back into the trap you just walked away from. But here's the truth: you don't need to respond with anger or dramatic emotion. You don't need to fight back with intensity. What you need is clarity, calm, and an inner stillness that cannot be shaken, just like the Stoics trained themselves to embody when facing betrayal and high-level power games. In this video, we'll explore 7 toxic behaviors people often resort to when they realize you've seen through them. And more importantly, how to respond with stoic strength, with stillness, resolve, and the wisdom to never play their game. If you've ever been manipulated or blamed simply for telling the truth, this video is for you. Let's begin. 1. When exposed, they rewrite the story. When a manipulative person realizes you've seen their true nature, they don't retreat, they immediately strike back. They won't choose honesty, nor will they admit any wrongdoing. Instead, they do everything they can to reverse the entire story. Rather than lowering their head and taking responsibility, they shift instantly into the role of the victim. Not only do they deny the truth, they distort the situation, accusing you of being too sensitive, overly judgmental, or even of stirring up drama on purpose. And so you, the one who finally had the courage to stand up for what's right, find yourself defending your own feelings, just to be heard, just to be believed. Worse still, they begin exploiting the very things that make you compassionate. Your kindness, your calm nature, your desire to keep the peace, all of it becomes a weapon in their hands. Because you dislike conflict, you stay quiet. Because you want mutual understanding, you hold back. Because you're afraid of hurting others, you forget that you are the one being hurt. Every word you say gets twisted. Every sincere reaction becomes ammunition used against you. While you're trying to protect the truth, they rewrite the narrative where you're painted as the problem, and they're the innocent one trying to endure you. But someone trained in Stoic philosophy does not fall for that trap. Marcus Aurelius didn't waste time arguing with liars, nor did he rush to fix anyone else's version of the story. He chose to live by reason, and let his character speak for itself. He once wrote, "If someone can show me I am wrong, I will gladly change. But if not, I will continue on the path I know to be right." That is not avoidance, it's real inner strength. The power of deliberate silence. Instead of chasing every rumor and defending yourself against every lie, you simply live in truth consistently, clearly, and with integrity. You don't need to shout to silence a lie. You just need to stop feeding it. When you refuse to react the way they expect, you take away the one thing they need to keep their manipulation going: your emotional energy. And when you can stand firmly in your truth without needing external validation, you don't just walk away from their game. You rise above it. Remember, you're not responsible for fixing someone else's version of events. You are only responsible for living your own truth with courage and clarity. 2. They pretend nothing ever happened. When the lies no longer work and every manipulative tactic has failed, some people won't explode in anger or argue openly. Instead, they choose something more subtle and far more dangerous: pretending nothing ever happened. No apology, no acknowledgement, not even a hint of remorse. What you get instead is a casual message, a friendly comment on social media, or a polite check-in, as if nothing had gone wrong between you at all. On the surface, it might seem lighthearted. It might even feel like they're offering a path to reconciliation. But in reality, it's a test. They're not returning out of love or to make things right. They want to see if you're still as easy to control as before. If you respond, they take it as a sign you've softened. If you smile back, they treat it as an invitation to resume their old role. And if you act like nothing happened, they assume the performance still works. This tactic doesn't just target your memory, it goes straight for the softest parts of you, your desire to stay civil, your fear of being seen as cold, and your craving for peace so deep that you'll choose silence over confrontation. But silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's control in disguise. Stoic philosophy doesn't teach us to be cold or emotionless, it teaches us to look beyond appearances and respond with wisdom. Epictetus said, "The only thing in our power is how we respond." You don't need to slam the door shut, but you shouldn't let someone walk back in if they aren't bringing honesty with them. You can be kind, you can be courteous, but you should never trade your clarity for a moment of comfort. Because the moment you pretend the pain never existed, you give it permission to return. If you feel guilty for not replying to a harmless message from someone who once hurt you, remember, forgiveness is about releasing bitterness, not reopening old wounds. You can let go and still protect your boundaries. You can move forward without turning around. A Stoic would remind you of this. True peace doesn't require making peace with something false. It only requires that you remain faithful to the truth you already saw. 3. They quietly smear you behind your back. When their lies no longer hold power, when fake kindness fails to reopen the door, and when your silence remains steady and unshaken, they don't walk away. They simply change tactics. Instead of coming at you directly, they begin dismantling your reputation from the shadows. They won't have a conversation. They won't argue. And they certainly won't acknowledge the rupture between you. Instead, they retreat behind the curtain where you can't see them and begin planting seeds of doubt, twisting your words, distorting your actions, and spreading vague concerns cloaked as care. They won't lie outright. They'll say things like, "I'm just worried about them," or "They've been acting a little strange lately, have you noticed?" It's this calculated ambiguity, this toxicity disguised as concern that slowly erodes how others see you. The cruelest part of this tactic is that you won't even know it's happening until the damage is done. You start noticing strange looks from people who used to trust you. Conversations become colder. Invitations start to disappear. You're left confused, wondering what changed, while they stand in the dark, poisoning the well and pretending to be clean. And what makes this trap even more dangerous is the urge to defend your reputation at all costs. You want to explain, you want to call them out. You want to clear your name. But that's exactly what they want, because the moment you react, the moment you lose your calm, you've stepped onto the stage they've set. A Stoic does not play that game. A Stoic doesn't waste precious energy chasing what lies outside their control. Seneca once wrote, "A sign of a great soul is the ability to rise above insults, not from weakness, but from a refusal to be controlled by them." Instead of fighting an invisible war, the Stoic chooses to live in such a way that their actions, character, and consistency become the loudest rebuttal to any false claim. You can't stop someone from twisting the story, but you can live in a way that makes lies unsustainable. Truth doesn't need to scream. It endures. It is quiet but undeniable when reinforced through steady, principled behavior over time. And if that means losing a few people who are quick to judge and slow to ask questions, that's not a loss, it's a cleansing. Because you don't need everyone to like you. You just need to be strong enough not to lose yourself in the noise. 4. They fake change to regain control. When all their manipulative efforts fail, when their lies are exposed, when their fake kindness doesn't shake you, and when their gossip can't bring you down, they don't give up. They shift to something more calculated, pretending to change. At this point, they stop denying and stop avoiding. Instead, they suddenly appear gentler, more attentive, even remorseful about what happened. They say they've been thinking, that they want to do better, that they now recognize your value and don't want to lose the relationship. They don't resist you anymore. They approach with what appears to be genuine kindness, soft words wrapped in strategy. And if you ever wish they would change, If you ever hoped the relationship could be saved, this is the moment you're most vulnerable. Because now, they're not saying toxic things. They're repeating your own words back to you. They show empathy they previously lacked. They even praise the strength they once rejected. But if you step back and observe closely, you'll see it's not real transformation. It's the same old manipulation in a new disguise, packaged in pleasant language and carefully crafted emotion. They haven't grown. They're just trying a different approach to see if you're still as persuadable as before. If guilt doesn't pull you back in, they'll try charm. If charm doesn't work, they'll play the role of someone healing. And if all else fails, they'll return to their old ways just dressed up in new language. A Stoic isn't fooled by this surface-level shift. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like the person who wronged you." That isn't just moral advice, it's a mental strategy. You must not lose your reason simply because someone suddenly looks vulnerable or claims to be awakened. So instead of reacting emotionally, the Stoic watches not for a moment, but over time. They don't believe in promises. They believe in patterns. Because real change doesn't arrive with a grand announcement. It's shown through consistency, humility, and daily effort. More importantly, real change never demands immediate trust. It doesn't ask you to erase old memories or reopen closed doors. It respects your boundaries as part of maturity, not obstacles to tear down. So if you feel doubt, don't blame yourself. That doubt isn't a lack of forgiveness, it's a sign of clarity. And if you choose to keep your boundaries, maintain silence, and stay distant, that's not coldness. That is the highest expression of self-respect and emotional wisdom. You can forgive, but you are under no obligation to restore someone's old place in your life. You can release bitterness without unlearning the lesson. You can continue to live kindly without ever living naively again. 5. They quietly test your boundaries. When fake remorse no longer works, when sweet words fail to move you, and when every attempt to reconnect is met with steady silence, they don't back off. Instead, they shift to a more subtle tactic, quietly testing your boundaries little by little. They won't offer a real apology, nor will they provide any genuine explanation. What they will do is send a friendly message, leave a cute comment under your post, or ask a mutual acquaintance how you've been, each action disguised to seem casual and harmless. But in truth, these are carefully disguised tests dressed in politeness. They're not simply saying hello, they're checking. They want to know whether the boundary you set is solid or just temporary, born out of anger. If you respond, they take it as a sign you've softened. If you begin to explain, they see it as an opening to negotiate. And if you stay silent, they slowly push the line further, just to see how long you'll hold firm. Because these actions seem small, polite, and non-confrontational, many people begin to doubt themselves, not because they've forgotten the reasons they walked away, but because they don't want to appear cold or unforgiving. They think it's just a quick hello or it won't hurt to be polite. And from that thought alone, they begin reopening a door they once fought hard to close. But it's that unprincipled kindness that makes boundaries collapse. Manipulators don't exploit your weakness, they exploit your goodness and your desire to avoid conflict. Stoics understand, a boundary isn't just something you say, it's a way of living. Epictetus emphasized that the only thing you truly control is how you respond to what doesn't belong to you. So you don't have to stop others from trying to reach you, but you are completely free to choose not to respond, not to reopen the door, and not to compromise what you already know is unsafe. And sometimes silence is the clearest response, firm but not aggressive. You don't need to say, "I don't want to talk to you anymore." You just don't respond. You don't need to explain why you're keeping your distance. You simply hold that distance with steadiness and without guilt. I once knew a woman named Clara who walked away from a toxic relationship that had lasted for years. After a long silence to heal, she quietly began rebuilding her life without drama, without resentment. But a few weeks later, the man reappeared with a brief message. "I hope you're doing well." Clara didn't reply. Then came a familiar song posted publicly, a song tied to their shared memories. And then a mutual friend messaged, He mentioned you said he misses the way your eyes looked when you smiled. All of it was vague, gentle, not openly hurtful, but just strong enough to tug at the soft places she was still mending. And at that moment she had to decide, stay firm or reopen the door and start the cycle all over again. Thankfully, Clara held her ground, not out of anger but from deep understanding. Not every check-in comes from kindness. Sometimes it's a trap wrapped in nostalgia and emotion. A Stoic wouldn't lash out or try to justify themselves. They'd simply live with clarity, keep their boundaries intact, and let their consistency speak louder than any explanation. So remember, you don't need to say no harshly, and you don't owe anyone an explanation for your distance. You only need to live like a wall they can no longer penetrate, no matter what form they try. 6. When they can't control you, they try to control how others see you. When every manipulative tactic fails, when fake kindness, vague apologies, and quiet testing are all met with unshakable resolve, they still won't quit. Because once they realize they can no longer control you, they'll shift focus, they'll try to control how others see you. They don't need to attack you directly to hurt you. They only need to plant enough doubt to isolate you slowly, quietly. They don't need to slander you openly. They just need to play the roles of the concerned one, the hurt one, the peacemaker. And while they play those roles, they begin rewriting the story. You changed. You became distant. You became difficult to understand. Most people won't see it right away because it isn't loud or dramatic. It's whispered in passing. It's disguised in suggestive glances and half-truths passed quietly through social circles. You don't see any visible wounds, but you feel the growing distance between you and those who once stood close. Messages go unanswered. Invitations fade. The atmosphere around you grows heavy and no one says why. The cruelest part isn't the smear campaign, it's the isolation. That sinking feeling of being quietly pushed out. When you don't know who to explain yourself to, what you're even up against, or why people you once trusted seem to be slipping away. And then instinct kicks in, you want to speak out. You want to clarify, to restore your name, to tell your side. But the moment you step into that battle, you're playing by their rules. A Stoic doesn't do that. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The most important thing in life is to live with integrity and to be patient with those who do not." That's not resignation. It's strategy. A recognition that you cannot control what others think, but you can always control how you respond. You don't need to chase every rumor. You don't need to win every person back. You only need to live in a way that your actions, your words, and your steadiness become a quiet, unwavering contrast to the lies. Because truth doesn't need to outrun a rumor. It only needs to endure long enough for the difference to become undeniable. Those who truly know you will stay. Those who walk away after hearing one side were never really yours to begin with. You don't need to win with offense. You only need to stand like a rock in muddy water, not reacting, yet never moved. And when they've tried everything, every story, every trick, every backdoor, and still can't pull you back in, when they lose control because you no longer give them what they need to manipulate, the game ends. Not because they stopped playing, but because you left the board. What remains is something no lie can break: inner freedom. A kind of freedom that doesn't come from winning, but from no longer needing to fight. 7. When they can't control you anymore, they pretend to let go but leave guilt behind. When every attempt at control has failed, when apologies can't soften you, strategic silence can't shake you, and even the smears behind your back can't turn others against you, they don't give up. Instead, they deploy one final tactic, pretending to let you go gracefully, while planting guilt in your mind on their way out. At this stage, they no longer blame you, beg you, or try to reach out directly. Instead, they begin spreading a message that they've let you go, that they only want what's best for you, or that they wish you happiness, even if they're no longer part of your life. But the way they say it, though calm on the surface, always carries a subtle emotional charge, one that quietly makes you ask yourself, was I too harsh? Am I hurting someone who actually cared? They're no longer trying to control your actions. but they still want to control what remains your emotions, especially your empathy. They don't want you to come back out of love. They want you to come back because you feel bad. They don't want truth to win. They want your conscience to defeat you. And if you're someone who's kind by nature, someone who sees empathy as a strength, then this tactic hits right at your softest spot. Because they're not just withdrawing, they're withdrawing in a way that makes you feel like the one at fault. They don't go completely silent either. They leave behind phrases like, "I accept everything, as long as you're at peace, or I won't bother you anymore." It sounds noble, but beneath it lies a carefully crafted emotional script designed to make you second-guess your boundaries. A Stoic sees right through this, because they understand that real letting go doesn't leave guilt behind. Only manipulation does that. Marcus Aurelius didn't live for approval or forgiveness. He lived for integrity, for a life rooted in clarity, not performance. So when someone backs away with vague, guilt-tinged remarks meant to make you question yourself, take a step back and look deeper at their true intent. You don't need to feel guilty for protecting your peace. You don't need to feel ashamed for choosing clarity over chaos. And you definitely don't need to reopen your heart just because someone mastered the art of exiting with a halo. Sometimes manipulation doesn't lie in what is said, but in the feeling they want to leave behind. And if you're awake enough to recognize that, you won't need to defend yourself with words. You won't need to explain anything. You'll simply stand tall, keep walking, and hold on to the peace you fought so hard to create. Because kindness does not mean you owe access. Forgiveness does not mean reopening closed doors. And unwavering silence many times is the highest form of emotional intelligence. If you've lived through these situations where affection was used as a mask, where your kindness was treated as weakness, and where your boundaries were labeled as betrayal, know this: you are not alone. You began to see clearly, not because you became cold, but because you stopped accepting what was false just because it felt familiar. You don't need to argue. You don't need to win every battle. What you need is to remain grounded, calm but not compromising, clear but not dependent on being understood by all. Because in a world full of performance, clarity is rebellion. In a world of noise, inner peace is a bold declaration. And when others try to define you in ways that serve them, it's how you live, not what you say, that becomes your final answer. So keep walking. Not to prove anything, but because you know the path you're on is the right one. No one can take away your inner steadiness unless you give it up yourself. Be steady like stone. Live with clarity. And never trade your peace to hold on to something that's already proven it doesn't deserve your presence. You are awake now. It's time to live like someone who can no longer be deceived.